All right. Can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so food safety. I'm just going to talk about allergens, preparation, sanitation, storage, and shelf life. Okay. Why is food safety important? Allergic reaction prevention and foodborne illness prevention are the two main reasons. So here we've got a list of allergens. These are the top 9 food allergens. It used to be top 8, but sesame was added to the list in 2021. Dairy and milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, wheat, soy, peanuts, tree nuts, and now sesame. Cross contact. The food you're cooking may not contain an allergen, but you could have come in contact with an allergen from something else you might have been cutting up or preparing, and that could have contaminated food. Allergic reactions can happen from cross contact. So to prevent cross contact, you'll want to use different utensils for different food. Clean, rinse, and sanitize utensils and work surfaces before working with different items, and wash hands before prepping and handling different types of food. This isn't really super important if you aren't cooking for someone with a food allergy or if you don't have a food allergy, but these are things to keep in mind if you are cooking for someone or yourself and you have a food allergy. There are 3 types of food contaminants. They're physical, chemical, and biological. Some examples of physical contaminants are metal shavings from cans, wood, fingernails, dirt, staples, bandages, glass, and jewelry. Pretty much anything that you can touch would be considered a physical contaminant. You would think fingernails or even bandages might be biological, but biological is strictly just like bacteria and things you can't see, really. Biological contaminant examples: bacteria, parasites, viruses, and fungi. And I actually think one of my slides skipped, yeah. And chemical contaminant examples are cleaners, sanitizers, polishes, machine lubricants, pesticides, hand lotions, deodorizers, hairsprays, anything that could come in contact with food that has chemicals in it. And these are all things to keep in mind when you're canning at home or preparing something to store away for a long time. You wouldn't want to get any of these kinds of things in your product you're making. But back to the biological contaminants, the 2 big ones on this to keep in mind for are bacteria and viruses. Bacteria cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. They can produce toxins that are not destroyed by cooking, and bacteria need 6 conditions to grow. They need food, time and temperature controlled for safety foods support the most bacteria growth. That's what TCS foods are, and I have another slide about that right after this one, I believe. They need acidity, neutral to slightly acidic foods, things like limes or citrus fruit or anything like that, or tomatoes. They won't really harbor a lot of bacteria. Temperature, bacteria grows rapidly between 40 and 140 degrees, and even more rapidly between 70 and 125. 40 to 140 is what's called the danger zone, and then 70 to 125 is the extreme danger zone. So you want to avoid having your food in that danger zone for more than about 4 hours, and for 70 to 125, even less than that. Time, like I said, 4 or more hours between 40 to 140 can allow enough time for a lot of harmful bacteria to grow. Oxygen is another thing that bacteria needs. Some bacteria can grow without oxygen, but for the most part, they need oxygen to grow, and also moisture. And we have the most control over time and temperature and those two things can limit the most bacteria. So TCS foods, TCS stands for time and temperature controlled for safety. These foods are high in moisture, high in protein, and slightly acidic or neutral pH. Like I was saying, that's what bacteria like to live in the most. Some examples would be milk and dairy, meat, fish, baked potatoes, sliced melons or tomatoes, poultry, or heat-treated foods. And heat-treated foods would just be like things that are already prepared, things you've already cooked. Bacteria, again, the top 4 bacteria that cause foodborne illness, Salmonella typhi, that's typhoid fever, non-typhoidal Salmonella, Shigella, and E. coli. And the best method of prevention for bacteria is good hygiene, avoiding cross-contamination, like I was talking about with the cross-contact, and cooking food to minimum internal cooking temperature, which I'll talk about next. So minimum internal cooking temperatures, when you're cooking steaks and like pork chops, fish and shellfish, roasts and eggs, you'll want to cook it to 145 degrees internally. Ground meat and sausage will be 155 degrees internally, and poultry, stuffed meat, pasta, and fish. And when you're reheating anything, it needs to get to 165 degrees. And then viruses, well, actually, with the bacteria, just some things that the bacteria are linked to. The Salmonella typhi is linked to ready-to-eat foods, like things you've already, you could buy in the store, like pre-made sandwiches and things that are already ready to eat when you buy them, and certain beverages. The non-typhoidal Salmonella is linked to poultry, eggs, meat, milk and dairy, and produce. Shigella is linked to produce, food that is easily contaminated by hands, like salads that contain temperature and time controlled for safety foods. That would be like tuna salad or any kind of salad like that that has like a meat or something in it, or a dairy. And then E. coli is linked to ground beef and contaminated produce. But these things can be avoided, like I said, with good hygiene, avoiding cross-contamination, and cooking food to the minimum internal cooking temperature. And then back to viruses. Viruses are carried by humans and animals. They require a host to live, and viruses don't grow in food, but they can be transferred through food, and they'll remain infectious in food. The top 2 viruses that cause foodborne illness are hepatitis A and norovirus. And the best method to prevent viruses being spread through food is just good hygiene. Hepatitis A is linked to ready-to-eat foods, like I was talking about before, and shellfish of contaminated water, and norovirus is the same. So when you're at the grocery store, before purchasing, inspect your packages and cans for signs of refreezing, like ice crystals. Refrozen items have typically thawed out and have been between 40 and 140 degrees. You don't know how long they've been in that zone of temperature, so it's best to avoid those products that might have ice crystals or have been refrozen to avoid bacteria. Look for rips in like bags, bulging in cans, and dents, especially at the seams. Dented cans can possibly contain botulism, particularly if the dent is at the seal. You'll probably be okay if it's not like at the seal, but just be mindful of that. And then storing food. First in, first out. You'll want to use your oldest items first to prevent food waste, and regularly inspect your cans, things you've canned at home, the things in your freezer for damages. You don't want to keep those things in there and possibly spread bacteria to your good things. Try not to overbuy or overcan. I know that's hard when you're growing your garden and you've got an abundance of produce that you can just can up and have forever, but over canning a lot of times leads to food waste, and overbuying does too. So that's just something to keep in mind if you can. If you can't not can it all, then that's okay too. But and then also keep an inventory. I know that's also a hard thing to do, but it'll just help you keep up with what you have in your pantry or your cabinets or your freezer, so you aren't overbuying things and buying multiples of things that you already have. Storing cold items. Store items according to minimum internal cooking temperatures, and my next slide will kind of show you how that works. Keep a freezer inventory. I know at my house we have 3 freezers and they're all a mess. So it would be really helpful for us if we kept a freezer inventory. For frozen beef, and I do want to say before I go over these time frames reflect best quality rather than safety. So if these things are kept correctly and sealed correctly and they don't thaw and then refreeze, then they're going to be okay for longer than these amounts of time. But they won't be of the same quality as they will be in these time frames. So the quality, the nutritional value, the taste, it'll go down over time, but it'll still be okay to eat. So anyways, frozen beef is best for 8 to 12 months. And like I said, it'll still be okay after that, but the quality just starts going down after that long. Poultry is best for 1 year. Ground meat, I can't see what it says because there's a little thing in front of it. I think it says best for 4 months. There's like a little 3 to 4. Yeah, that's what I thought. There's a little box in front of it that I can't get to go away. That's why my slide keeps changing. But anyways, cured meat is best for 2 to 3 months. And with cured meat, the high salt level makes it go rancid in the freezer quicker. So it's best for 2 to 3 months. And fish, lean fish is best for 4 to 6 months. 4 to 6 months. And then fatty fish, that would be like salmon and tuna, that's best for 2 to 3 months. But like I said, all these things will last longer than that if they're kept properly. And this is what I was talking about with storing things according to minimum internal cooking temperature. This is just recommended. You obviously don't have to do this. We don't do this at home. It's just the safest way to store things in your cooler and freezer. But on top, you'll want to store your ready to eat foods. On the second shelf, you'll want to store anything that needs to be cooked to 145 degrees, like your fish, eggs, roast, anything like that. The third shelf will be anything that needs to be cooked to 155. That's like your ground beef, your sausage. And then the fourth shelf, anything that needs to be cooked to 165, like your poultry, stuffed meat, stuffed pasta, anything like that. And then storing canned items. And the same goes for these two. These things will still be safe to use after these time periods have passed. The quality will just go down over time. But home canned goods are best within 1 to 2 years of canning. They'll last longer if sealed and stored correctly. But like I said, quality deteriorates over time. You'll want to store them in a cool, dry, dark place at 40 to 60 degrees. And then store-bought canned goods. Let's see. You'll want to use low acid canned goods within 3 years of the label date. So that's like 3 years after as well. So they can last a really long time. Use high acid foods within 2 years of the label date. Use canned meats and seafood within 3 years of the label date. Fruit juices can be stored up to 1 year of the label date. And you'll want to store in a cool, dry, dark place at 40 to 70 degrees. With high acid foods, we got somebody else coming in. With high acid foods, they have the potential to corrode the can that they're in. So the taste could change over time. The quality can change over time. That's why fruit juices should only be stored up to 1 year, and then high acid foods up to 2 years within the label date. Those things can corrode over time. With your home canned things, if they aren't stored correctly, if they're stored near like water, your metal seal can rust, and small holes can come in your metal seal in the top, and that'll allow spoiling agents to get in. So these are things to just keep in mind when you're checking your supply of things. Make sure there's no rust, no corrosion, anything like that. And also storing at the correct temperature is really important. If you store your canned things, I think like 95 degrees is when it gets the most dangerous. The high temperature can allow bacteria to start forming, so it's really important to store at about 40 to 70 degrees. And then this was kind of just a little chart of things that you might notice in your canned things, whether it's home canned or canned from the store. Brown color or dark color, it's caused by oxidation or chemical breakdown of food pigments, and it's still safe to consume. And these are all if you don't smell anything weird or see anything that's just out of the ordinary in the can. If it's brown and there's a smell and weird things in the can, probably don't eat it. But soft food texture, that's chemical breakdown of plant or animal tissue, and that's also safe to consume. Like I said, no weird smell, no weird things in the can. It's probably okay. Crystals in canned fish, that's magnesium ammonium phosphate crystals that naturally form, and that's also safe to consume. The crystals dissolve with heat. And then white crystals in some fruits like apricot or grape juice. The crystals are a natural acid salt complex. And again, yes, if the food has no off odors. And then food above the liquid level in home canned foods, they're also safe. And that's all given there's no strange appearance or odor. Tasting is okay. And for added safety, if you're not sure for older things, you can boil it for 10 minutes before you try it. And then date labeling. I thought this was really interesting. Manufacturers provide dating labels to determine when food is of the best quality, not of the highest safety. So, but the exception to this is infant formula. So anything you buy from the store, the date label on it doesn't reflect when it's of the highest safety, just of the best quality. It's like the same for all the frozen things. If you store it correctly, you should still be safe to eat it for quite a while. There are different commonly used date labeling phrases. Best if used by or before indicates when a product will be of the best flavor or quality. Sell by indicates how long a store can display the product for sale. Use by indicates the last date recommended for the use of the product at peak quality. And then freeze by indicates when a product should be frozen to maintain peak quality. So all of these things, they don't indicate safety. It's all about quality. So you should be able to keep like things in your pantry that are expired for quite a while. And I know my mom would say I'm the worst. I go through the pantry and the refrigerator and I throw away everything because it's out of date or whatever. But really, you can keep these things for longer than what's on the box, just as long as they're stored correctly. So I believe that is my last slide. Did anybody have anything they wanted me to go back to or any questions?